Greetings everyone, welcome to our talk about accessibility in Far Cry series. And brief introduction, my name is Ivan Kulbych. I'm into game industry for already 20 years. I released quite a lot of titles. And now I joined Ubisoft Kiev during Far Cry 5, was working at Far Cry New Dawn and working on Far Cry 6 at the moment. What I will talk about today is based on experience working on those titles, and I will start with a brief introduction, why do we care about accessibility and some legal aspects of it. Then go to our starting point, where we was with accessibility at Far Cry 5, and go with list of features we implemented for Far Cry New Dawn, and things we are working on now. And then I will cover a little bit about accessibility testing at Ubisoft. So, why accessibility important for us? Well, by definition, accessibility gives ability to play for people with disabilities by removing barriers. I will not talk about designing new game from scratch in this presentation. It's more about how to give ability to enjoy already existing gameplay to the people who need some additional features to do this. And of course, we're talking about quite a lot of people that may benefit from this. But it's not only about people with disabilities, because everyone on occasion benefit from those features. So if you, for example, playing without sound and because of child sleeping in the same room, you will need pretty much same features that deaf person to enjoy the game. And of course, features as remapping are used by a lot of players just to make game more convenient, more custom. So it's for everyone if we have non-perfect conditions or want to customize something. And of course, we also need to comply with US law. And a few words about it. CVA is quite old law. It was signed by Barack Obama, but it was waived for several years, and it only became mandatory for game industry from last year. And this law actually not covers all aspects of the game. It's only focus on chat systems. So if you don't have voice, text, and audio chat in the game, you don't need to care about this law at all. But if you do have any kind of chat, then it should be usable for people with disabilities. And in addition to this, they need to be able to navigate to the game, to this chat. It means that, for example, they need to be able to create new game, join another player, enter into chat. So it can be tricky for some games. That's all about generic stuff. Now I will focus about our experience with Far Cry. And you might know that Far Cry 5 was a very successful game and got generally very positive reviews, but it was not that good on accessibility side. And we was getting even some feedbacks that for some players it was easier to play previous games of series rather than Far Cry 5. Of course, our team was not happy to read such reviews. So when we discussed Far Cry New Dawn, Kiev team asked to take responsibility for accessibility features, and we tried to push it to get more accessible games than Far Cry 5 in short time frame. So what we got for Far Cry New Dawn is remapping, colorblind mode, subtitles that allow now to customize size, speaker, background, visualization for important sounds from game combat, then speech recognition for our voice chat, menus narration, so it would be easier to navigate in menus without reading, and chat wheel to communicate with your co-partners. Now I will go through those features in more detail one by one. So first one is very standard for almost each PC game nowadays, keyboard remapping. As usual, you can see a list of actions and buttons assigned to them. You can choose any action and change button. You will get some confirmations if there are conflicts. More interesting part, more advanced part is what we have on right side of screen here. It's a keyboard image where you can see which buttons allocated for these contacts vehicles in this example, and which buttons occupied by context everywhere in the game. Moreover, you can even mouse over each button to see which action assigned to this button. For gamepad remapping, it was first time it's got implemented in the Far Cry series, and we gone with button swapping actually instead of action-based remapping for each button, because we have very few buttons on gamepad and quite a lot of action in this game. So each button responsible for few actions, and for Far Cry New Dawn you can swap between buttons that you want until you get what is most usable for you. And of course, feedbacks on the screen that we display to user to know what action corresponds to what button also need to be changed. For gamepad it's a little bit trickier than for keyboard, because when we have this kind of layout that duplicates physical position of buttons on gamepad, then after remapping we need to change visualization for this change layout. Next one is colorblind mode. For New Dawn it was very basic on-off switch, and if it's turned on then we switch to palette that is optimized for all major types of color blindness. For subtitles, as I said before, we can now turn on speaker name. You can set background semi-transparent or completely black, and you can choose size of the text. And next is more advanced thing. Now in the game you can turn off directional arrows that will show important combat sounds. So if you play without sounds, it will be easier to not be surprised by something happened out of your area of vision. Speech to text is another new addition. When your co-partner communicate to you, you can see here, if you turn this option on, you can see speech recognition, and libraries for this are provided by first parties, console manufacturers. For New Dawn, it was very new, but since then Microsoft and Sony increased quality of speech recognition quite a lot.
Toggle voiceover, speakers, microphone,
Next one
Windows
is menu
default,
narration.
voice communication, push to talk, 12 of 16. Tab, audio, gameplay, 1 of 7. Audio, 2 of 7. Video, 3 of 7. Options, resume,
Here
1 of 9. Survival guide, 2
developed
of
quite
9.
robust way.
Options, 3 of 9. Resume, 1 of 9.
To
Follow
give
me.
audio that helps to navigate through.
Message from Deputy 1. Follow me.
And of course chat wheel. It's
Message from
useful
Deputy
when
1.
you're playing with your
Attack.
co-partner.
Message from Deputy 1. Well played.
Not only for people with disabilities, but actually for every player if you want to give quick comments. Okay, that's more or less like features that kind of specialized for accessibility in Far Cry New Dawn. But of course, accessibility also include generally good like UI UX consideration, such as font size and clear font, background, and so on. And despite we was quite limited in time, New Dawn was released less than a year after Far Cry 5. We got very favorable reviews about accessibility. And what is also very important for us, same people that were such unhappy about Far Cry 5 completely encourage us and say that it's a very good step forward now. Game become much more usable. So now moving to work in progress. What I will show here is not final, and I will only touch a few features. For Far Cry 6, we focused mostly on things that were on basic level for Far Cry New Dawn. For example, colorblind mode, we still have on-off switch, and with on you still have optimized palette for all types of color blindness. But you also can customize it if you want. For example, like replacing different categories, enemy outline color. If you want to change it, you can choose from predefined palette, and then you will get enemies that much more visible against any type of background. For Gamepad remapping, on Far Cry New Dawn, we had simple version of it, where you can swap buttons, but you can't change actions that are assigned to the same buttons. They will always stay on the same. On Far Cry 6, it's not so anymore, so now you have a list of actions that is similar to keyboard and mouse. And for each, you can remap it not only to different buttons, you can also assign combination of buttons, because again we have more actions and buttons on Gamepad, and you can choose interaction type, so you can assign it to press, hold, or double press. And of course you might not want to use it for jump, but for some other actions this might be useful. And of course, for people who don't want to spend too much time on those customization, we provide a few different presets for remapping. Scaling fonts. In New Dawn, we only had possibility to customize a text for captions, but now you also can do this for SFX visualization. You can increase the size of text for speech recognition, and in general you can set HUD increased size of elements. When you're doing so, we not just apply uniform scale to all HUD because we don't have enough screen space to increase size of everything. It will not give good result, so we customize it depending on importance of each element on the screen, and to make sure that there are no too small elements at any time. So that was about Far Cry 6. Now I will talk in general about approach to accessibility testing. Its first line of defense, I would say, is UX Lab and Bucharest is specialized at accessibility checklists, and they're giving such reports to all titles developed at Ubisoft that test game against many criteria, checking for different kind of functionalities, so it helps to not forget something. But it's same things applied to each title. So it's not eliminating needs of our accessibility managers and experts who also do workshops for teams all around the world. And after we got early builds of the game, they playing early build to see what kind of problems we can encounter, what we might not notice, or what might be beneficial in terms of accessibility, and give recommendations to dev team. Then accessibility managers also have a list of players with disabilities all around the world and organize user testing when needed. But for this game need to be almost final, so if you don't have kind of good working build, it would be very hard to get useful feedback because game in development stage often too broken even for experienced players. And you can judge usability and accessibility on this. And of course, reviews are very important for us. So actually it comes often too late for current title. Some exceptions might be. For Far Cry 5, for example, after reading reviews, we turned on subtitles by default with one of our patches. But for bigger changes, it's actually step 0 for improving our next titles. Seeing what we done right and wrong in our previous games. So, accessibility, as I discovered in this presentation, is not something that changes the game, like not changing core. It's just adding value on top of existing product, same like elevator is just addition to stairs. And for some people, it's essential to enjoy the game. For some people, it can be beneficial from time to time, or at least neutral. If you don't need those options, you just don't use them. And of course, everyone benefits from good generally usability. From our experience, we found that we can improve it in limited time frame, but of course, if we want to reach like extra polish, if we want to have really kind of detailed covered everything, then it can require a huge amount of time. And of course it can't be done without reading reviews, testing, getting through lots of iterations. That's it. Thank you, and looking forward to your questions.
Perfect. Well, Ivan, thank you so very much for providing that talk for us today. It was very cool to kind of seeing kind of the history of the Far Cry series and in regards to accessibility moving forward. So those in the chat, we do have Ivan actually here with us today to answer any questions you have. So feel free to post them in the chat, and they'll be sent to me to be able to ask Ivan here. So, but the question I want to ask first off, Ivan, is obviously with Far Cry 5 and even New Dawn, we started to kind of see a lot of accessibility kind of being built in from the previous titles. Moving into Far Cry 6, what was some of the challenges that you found kind of trying to be able to move some of the accessibility from 5 and New Dawn and trying to be able to have that same cohesive experience moving into 6?
So thank you. And first of all, challenge is just scale of the game. When you're trying to make a game more accessible, you need to cover so many aspects for the game of this scale that created by like thousands of developers over a few years, and it has so many different aspects. So at the end, for building remapping, for example, we need to cover so many edge cases, and to make it properly, it requires a huge amount of time. And that's why for New Dawn, we were able to make only like basic version of it. And now on Far Cry 6, we're trying to catch up on things that we feel was not polished enough.
Very cool. And I also wanted to ask, because I found that with New Dawn, there was like some amazing accessibility kind of built in there. And you kind of mentioned also as well that you were in regards to Watch Dogs, kind of viewing that over. And I kind of see also Ubisoft really kind of making a push forward that pretty much majority of the accessibility from different franchises are kind of making their way into the everyone's kind of projects. So what were some of the things that you have learned from the Far Cry series that you're able to integrate into the other projects that you're working on?
Yeah, it's actually cross project. So we're discussing those features, of course, between Ubisoft designers. So, for example, sound visualization comes actually from upcoming Watch Dogs title into Far Cry New Dawn. So it was created for another title first that is not released yet. And then we just like discussing accessibility issues and how we solve them, and share this between titles. So many features indeed will look similar in different Ubisoft titles.
Very cool. We have a question actually from the chat as well. Do you think it was easier for the new version to plan ahead for accessibility?
It is. So accessibility is something to be considered from the very scratch, of course, because many features just super hard to add at last moment or impossible to add at last moment. At the same time, we kind of don't want to bind developers of core games with saying, okay, you can't do this because if you do another way, it would be much more accessible. So we're giving those recommendations, of course. So we like voicing accessibility from the very start, accessibility reason, but also we need to make sure that a game itself creatively have everything like that designers want, so it would be enjoyed by everyone. And then we're also thinking about how to make those experiences more accessible.
Fantastic. Now, also, I wanted to ask, because obviously Ubisoft is kind of positioned in the industry at like having a very centralized accessibility project team with David Tisserand and Cherry Thompson. How How unique is that in sort of your kind of workflow and trying to build to not only just cheerlead accessibility within your team, but also to kind of keep things in focus and in perspective, especially with a project as large as Far Cry 6?
So as I covered in this presentation, we started with like lots of different workshops for different teams around the world. It actually was managed by David, and some other people presenting here was participating. So thanks for those workshops. It was super helpful for all developers. Then we studied reviews for Far Cry, for different other games. We discussed like our plans for design within team and with designers from other teams. And then we created a vision of what we want to push forward, how we want to solve accessibility problems that we found in reviews that we heard from other people. And then we pushing to implement this, but of course there are many surprises along the way. So early testings like those that was done recently by Cherry for Far Cry 6, those are super helpful, and we get like over 100 of points to solve in feedback alone.
Awesome. Well, Ivan, thank you so very much for chatting with us today and providing a lot of insight. We were seeing in the conversation happening in the chat that they thank you for being as open about it, talking about accessibility in this manner. So we thank you so much. Where can we be able to find you online if anyone has any further questions for you?
Yeah, you can email me. That would be easiest way to reach me at Kulbych@Ubisoft.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Ivan. We'll be chatting with you very soon. We appreciate it.
Thank you.